This is the Waupaca Area School District Board of Education meeting.
Okay, thank you everyone for making time in your schedules. We will start with the pledge. And Carol, I don't think I've asked you to lead us in the pledge for a while. Can you get up, okay?
Oh, God, Robert. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, let the record reflect that Mr. Hackett is excused and we have Dimitri Martin participating via telephone. With that, I will move on to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. With that, we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to make public comment, address the board? With that silence, we are now ahead of schedule. We'll move on to item 6. Approval of the minutes. We'll start with the September 11, 2018 regular board meeting.
So moved.
So motion, is there a second? Motion and second, any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. September 12th, 2018 special board meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to communications with the administrator's report.
Thank you, President Johnson. So at the conclusion of our last board meeting, it occurred to me that we had not yet properly introduced our new Director of Informational Technology, Steve Tomaszewski. So Steve, these are your board members. So welcome, Steve.
Welcome.
Hi.
You can turn and wave to the camera if you want to.
Steve didn't know I was going to do that, by the way. So this week, October 7th through the 13th, is School Board Member Appreciation Week. Heartfelt thank you to all of our school board members for their dedication and commitment to public education and the students in our community. The Wisconsin chapter of the National Band Association has selected the Waupaca High School Wind Ensemble to perform at the 2019 conference at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire on Saturday, January 19th. Congratulations to Anna Luzier and Mark Krishak for their leadership and accomplishment. The Waupaca High School Mad Jazzers have been selected to perform at the closing general session of the 2019 Wisconsin State Education Convention on January 25th. Congratulations again to Ms. Luzier and all those who contributed to this talented group of young students. The school and district accountability report cards have been released to the administration but are embargoed from public release until November. The results will become public in November after accountability scores have been verified. We look forward to sharing the continued progress of the district with the public in November. And then finally, Aaron Jensen, our Director of Athletics and Co-Curricular Activities, has designed this very colorful and informative fall sports program flyer as a means to promote participation and Comet pride. So thank you to Aaron for his leadership. That concludes my report.
If you have not received one, I believe they're on sale for $3 as a partial fundraiser. Please feel free to reach out and, do you recall, is it free?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please feel free to, not free, please feel free to help support our extracurricular and athletic endeavors. I will not ask where the School Board Appreciation Week came from. Is it a Hallmark occasion?
It's from Wisconsin Association of School Boards. Okay. So it's your organization.
All right. We'll move on to the school board, reports on meetings attended in schools, school visits. Does anyone have a report? Would you like to start, please?
I took a visit. I stayed in the safe zone. I came to the high school. And I checked out a couple things here. I went back in my old classroom, which was the first time that I've been there, and everything was in good hands. The kids were coding like crazy, and it was a good atmosphere. I saw a presentation outside. Ironically, it was how to kick a soccer ball. So I saw the freshman drama class with Nancy Cummings was out there giving a little presentation. So I saw that and just kind of walked around the building, stopped in and guidance counselors, and I met the new guidance counselor secretary. Barb is her name?
Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie. Okay, and it's funny because I had her as a student, like my second year teaching here in 1985 or 86. So that was interesting to meet up with her. So it was good.
I attended a couple of things related to our charter school. The first was a mandatory for schools or districts who received the federal grant. There was a mandatory WORKS, which is the Wisconsin Resource Center for Charter Schools, a mandatory day-and-a-half workshop. It's going to be an annual event, and in the first half day, we found out more about the requirements for grantees to fulfill in terms of policies that need to be in place within a district or the school, how to spend and report spending, and the DPI will be making site visits to the charter school, and they will want to see receipts, documents showing what was purchased, and then be able to see what was purchased. That'll be among the things they'll be looking at. They'll also be looking at comparing what the school is doing to the mission of the school, the stated mission and such. The second day was filled with breakout sessions, a couple of full sessions, and Sarah Hackett, who is Steve Hackett's daughter-in-law and director of WORKS, just said, go pick anything that you find interesting. So there was no pressure to align ourselves with our role. The requirement was that an administrator, a school administrator, the governance council president, and an authorizer attend the meeting. So Rhonda Hare and Megan Sanders and I went. It was in Weston, so easy driving distance. It's very interesting. And the CEC was assigned a mentored school, and it is Lodi. We were really excited about that. It was one of the schools that was a site visit for the group of people.
If I may ask, what is what is their role?
You know, they unfortunately weren't able to be there to meet with us. I think they will be a sounding board for us. They'll no doubt come to visit the school and share observations, and of course, members of the CEC can return to Lodi.
Dimitri, can you hear okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
There's a little ticking noise, but other than that, it's fine.
Okay.
Sandy, as long as we're just kind of, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned that the DPI is going to come around for a regular visit. Does the DPI have like a team of people that visit all charter schools, or just new ones? Or this is the first time I've heard of them having such a.
I think these are visits related to the federal grant. So it's going to be the grantees who receive these site visits. And it's through the charter school division of the DPI.
I get it.
Will be conducting these.
Okay. So if you didn't receive a grant, then you probably wouldn't receive a visit from the DPI.
I can't speak to that entirely, but that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then the second thing that I attended was the CEC's first public event, Apple Fest, which occurred just last week, and it was a lovely event. We saw Mark there, and well attended. The students planted the last tree in an orchard that's been established out in front of the Chain School building, the CEC building. And then everyone went upstairs, and there were student presentations that ranged from advertising, to folklore, to history, to event planning for the students who planned the event. Quite a wide variety. There must have been 10 or 12 different presentations. And we did see Angie Landsberg interviewing Ms. Hare from and that was great to see. I had seen Don Smith earlier in the day and told him about, I guess it was the day before, and he said, just remember, this is your first year. Take a video of everything and then look at it 5 years from now. But I must say, it was really a stellar opening night. And they have another event coming up in November, is that right? So I would say it really was a great inaugural event. The CUC staff and the governance council and of course the students are to be congratulated. It's very exciting. And they have things to eat, apple things, like crisp and pie. Yeah. That's it. Ends my report with food.
Well, it's kind of interesting that I'll follow up because I went to the chain today. I actually went online to see where we were supposed to go for visits, and I followed the directions, and I actually went to the chain this month. But some of the things you mentioned, I also had a chance to see the orchard, and I talked to some of the students who did Apple Fest. And Rhonda was not there today when I came in the morning, and she was out of the building for some other reason. And but I had a chance to obviously walk through the whole building, both upstairs and downstairs, not just the charter school, but obviously our regular school personnel out there. I must say, the last time I was out there was actually in the summer, just to see some of the construction, but the last time I was there when we had students, it was, it was a little eerie when you go to the upstairs because there wasn't much activity. But when you go now, it's a busy place because every nook and cranny is being used, which is really nice. I mean, it really makes the whole building come alive. But I stopped and chatted with in Ms. Olson's class a little bit. She was teaching math to students from the different classes. They weren't all her students. There were students who came to her for math, and they were they were trying to equalize fractions. And I looked, but I didn't participate because I wasn't sure I knew the answers to some of those. But anyway, that was nice, and I heard them talk about some of their projects, such as Apple Fest, and recycling is real. A number of them talked about the recycling. There are a lot of signs in the building about recycling and what you can recycle, what you're not supposed to recycle, blah blah blah. And then the other thing that was of note, other than just wandering around a little bit and chatting with people, I went into and talked to our kitchen staff a little bit because I wanted to know how things were going, because we have really quite an influx of students in terms of numbers from previous years. So I was curious as to whether the influx and the facilities we have there, the cafeteria, the kitchen, and the food preparation area was adequate. And they said that things were moving just fine. They weren't having any problems at all, and told me that, I think it was last Friday, as an example, they fed 94 students, which unfortunately I don't have a whole lot to compare that to, but for them that was a large number comparatively to the past. And they said it went real smoothly, knowing that of course a lot of students don't take hot lunch or bring their own. So, but they were real positive in terms of the numbers, in the sense that they didn't have any difficulty handling that. So I was real pleased to hear that, because it's the sort of thing where we tend to forget a little bit is it has an impact on other people other than just our teaching staff and aides and so forth. So that was really good. But the other thing I want to mention, and you brought it up a little bit, Sandy, and we're going to have a little discussion of this coming up later. We received a grant. The community garden is moving facility, and we received a grant for that, which is going to be turned over to the charter school somehow, some way. Right now it's sitting where it's always sitting, but eventually that's going to come to some place in the budget, and then it'll have to show where it comes from, the way it sounds, and then how it's going to be used. I'm guessing now, based on what you were talking about.
Yes, although I don't think the DPI will be looking at anything but the grant-related funds.
From the
I mean, they'll
from-
want to see the
Yeah,
district contribution.
from the federal grant, yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, that will be coming, and we'll have to figure out how to do all of that. And I've talked to Greg about that. We'll have a meeting coming up somewhere in the near future. But that's actually kind of exciting that we received that. And as Steve Johnson was there last Tuesday when we had the presentations and talking to one of the community foundation people, she told me that one of the reasons why we received the grant, because in the grant proposal was all about the change from where we are presently located to the chain school. And they're very excited about that idea because the connection with the educational component to them was very, very important. And so we received the maximum amount of money that we could get for that, which will then turn over and eventually move out to the chain. So that was real positive.
I think that will play into whatever report is given, because the community garden was mentioned in the grant proposal.
Yeah, good. But it should be very easy to follow, in terms of where it comes from, obviously, and then how it's used, I suspect will be fairly straightforward as well. So, looking forward to it.
Well, I followed the schedule, and I was supposed to visit 4K. So I went to Trinity this afternoon for their 4K program. It was quite a visit. 4-year-olds are incredible. They were so cute. There's 19 of them in the class. The teacher, Ms. Harris, is out. She had babies, so the director, Carmen, is filling in for her. So she was, all excited, gave me a tour around, and the students had just made applesauce cake, and they were able to tell me all the ingredients in their cake and how much. They're all excited. Tomorrow they're going to Christensen's Apple Orchard, and they're hoping it doesn't rain because they love riding a bus, they told me. I was amazed at her teaching methods. They were so creative. It came time to line up for snack, and so usually children just line up for snack and they go down the hall and whatever. She had them line up in a pattern, and they had to figure out the pattern. It was boy, girl, what do we do? We have 3 girls left at the end. They all had to repeat it every time. Then they went out to the bathroom, went to the bathroom, then they lined up against the water wall. And while they're all waiting, they had to say their ABCs, and a low voice, and a mouse voice, and a country western voice. I mean, it was so creative and such a good use of time. I was just so impressed with, how something mundane turned into really a teaching moment. And they have a choice to run down the hall like an animal, myself included, cheetah. And then we went and had snack, and one of the children's parents brought the snack, and they were so well behaved. I mean, I spent an hour there. I was just dumbfounded. But the thing that cracked me up the most, other than the wonderful learning methods, there was this cute little 4-year-old girl that was just like this big, and she had silver boots on. They were adorable, and they had like a unicorn horn on. I said, "I love your boots." She said, "You do?" I said, "Yeah." She said, $30, TJ Maxx. And she flipped her hair and walked away. I was just like, great. $30, TJ Maxx. I laughed so hard out loud. I thought, everybody needs to laugh like that, once a day. It was just.
If our next meeting you come in with a pair of boots with those
know,
on,
with the
we'll know where they came
unicorn.
from.
So anyway, it was a great visit. I'm just so impressed with what 4-year-olds are doing in 4K. And they were writing their names, and it's October. So good things are happening in 4K.
And some great ideas for the next principals meeting, Mark.
The boots, the flipping the hair, the running like a cheetah, what? I think Betty needs to
How
come
about
in.
saying the ABCs in a country western voice?
Yeah, there you
Say
go.
something in a country western.
Well, I said, "Can you say it?" They said, "Tell us to say something." I said, "Well, how about a cowboy voice?" I thought I was being really creative, like I just got back from North Carolina, so they were talking weird, and the teacher said, "Oh, we call that country western, and we know that too." I was like, "Okay, we'll take it away," and they did. They knew a country western voice, and off they went. It was just, I I was just amazed at the creativity and what the wonderful use of time for something that, isn't normally a teaching moment. So there, it was great.
Thank you. Dimitri, if you have a report, I'll ask you to hold it till our next regular meeting. You can combine it in there, just for purposes of everybody being able to hear.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. All right, upcoming meetings. We've got the October 17th WASB Fall Regional Meeting and Workshop. Budget hearing scheduled for 5 p.m. on October 30th. Our next regular board meeting, November 13th at 5:15 here. And November 14th is the WASB Legislative Advocacy Workshop, if anybody wishes to attend that. Carol, will they get in touch with you, I presume?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just mention, I think Sandy, you and I are signed up to go to the October 17th meeting. Is anybody else planning on? Okay. Dimitri, were you signed up for that?
No.
No.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Next item, recognition.
State Superintendent Dr. Tony Evers has declared National School Lunch Week, October 15th through the 18th. And he has also declared School Bus Safety Week, October 22nd through the 26th. So we will be supporting our support services during those couple of weeks.
Thank you. And without much of a break, Administrator.
Yes, so our first item is
Before you move all the way into that, just so the board is aware, item 5 under Administrator, I will be stepping out of the room, recusing myself from any discussion on that.
So we've got a summer school report, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ersbaumer and Mr. Flayton to share this information.
Sure. So, go ahead. I was just going to say overall, I mean, the 30-second view, I think the summer school, as you'll see here, was a success this past summer. And it continues to be a success here in the district of Waupaca. And you'll see, I think it grew. And I think that's important from a student learning perspective. I think also from just a student engagement perspective. We all know about the summer slide, and just sometimes it's hard on parents and kids too to be away from school and the routines and the learning. And the unique opportunities that summer school provides. So I appreciate your guys' support of summer school very much, and I think it has benefits to our students.
If I may ask real briefly, the presentation indicates that there was an increase of 17 FTEs. How did that break down as to the number of people or students at that?
We can flip
We'll get through the slides. I just wanted to give you the 30-second overview. I apologize for jumping ahead there.
So it is my pleasure to be here with Mr. Flayton to present summer school results, as it was another successful summer school for Waupaca School District. And a lot had to do with Mr. Flayton here at the high school and the number of students that were able to come on board. So we knew the high school was an area of growth, and it definitely showed that this summer. So a lot of the numbers that you see, big raise in FTEs really happened here at the high school, which was great, and I thank Mr. Flayton for putting his time for that. So on the board, you'll just see a couple of enrichment courses and remediation courses that were new this summer. And in a couple of slides, you'll see that there were quite a few new classes, not in addition, but replaced some of them and just revamped a few courses to make it more interesting for students. So if you go to the next slide, Dr. Dave. So 53 high school students earned 47.5 credits through continuous progress courses. I believe that's probably a record for what we've seen at the high school. 8,439 meals were served to our students during summer school. That was big. The WLC had a lot of people eating breakfast and lunch every morning. Students that were district students that didn't enroll in summer school that still could take advantage, did come and take advantage. And it was a natural increase of 18 FTE through summer school. And a new piece to summer school in our third session, which was very popular, was the daycare that was provided for the Waupaca First Institute, where our staff came to the high school and took courses, and we provided a summer school course for those kids to be while they were here at no charge to the employees. So it was a very popular thing for our kids. Community partnerships again, Fox Valley Tech with babysitting. Our DNR hunter safety class was popular again. The City of Waupaca recreation swimming lessons. That's a large chunk of minutes for us, and so we thank the recreation department for allowing us to partner with them. And then the second year in a row now, we've worked with the Waupaca Community Theater with Beauty and the Beast, and we're able to take advantage of some of the kids that were there, and it was a great experience there. So a lot of good partnerships. So I came to you with this slide in 2017, and showed you some of the new courses. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see what we added for this last summer. And they were very popular courses. And on the right-hand side of that slide, you'll see the high school. That's where most of the new courses were actually added, or we were counting for the very first time. And a lot of our FTEs that we added onto that came from that group of courses. So very successful here at the high school. So we compared expenses from 2017. The net classroom expenses was $1,395, and that was with collecting fees and 2 sessions. And if you look at this summer, we had 3 sessions, didn't collect any fees, and the cost was $3,113. A pretty small cost considering adding a full 3rd session onto that and not collecting fees. So I think that was a huge success for the district as well. You'll see the transportation cost was $942 in 2017. We added busing this year in June 11th through the 29th. It was $2,523, and then the last week of the 2nd session in July, if you go to the next one, you'll see the driver paid trip cost, and the transportation cost went from $942 to $7,122. It is an area where we added the 4 routes, and we thought we'll give it a shot and see how many kids would take advantage of that. Not as many kids as I think we thought would take advantage of it. Leaving summer school to go down to the rec center or go to Sunny Day, those buses were pretty full. Coming to school, whether it was the high school, middle school, or elementary, we really didn't see a large number of kids. We might have averaged 15 students on all 4 buses combined in the morning. So something that we need to think about moving forward. And then enrollment comparisons from summer of 16, 17, and 18. The instructional minutes are up there because that's how our enrollments are calculated. So you need 48,600 minutes for 1 summer school FTE. So we had to divide into the 3,940,540, and that comes out to 81 FTEs, which you can see is 18 increase from last summer itself. And that 3rd session had a lot to do with it. And then, Mr. Johnson, your question of the number of students the last 3 summers participating, these are single count students. We went from 971 2 summers ago to 1,538 of our student population, which is a large part of the Waupaca School District enrollment. So excellent to see. And that's where you see the 900,000 minutes more, which created that 81 FTE. So when you look at success, Mr. Flake and I look at success in a number of different ways, but one of the ways we look at it is the number of FTEs. And we both were swallowing hard as we're pumping in the minutes into the report. So we were very happy to see 81 show up there. So our recommendations would be to the board for next summer. Obviously, we don't need decisions now, but something moving forward would be to continue with the no fees, continue with the 3 sessions, and then to continue with busing for sessions 1 and 2 for next summer. I think that it was new, and I think now that people know it's there, we might see an increase. So I think we should give it another shot for 1 more summer to see if our enrollments increase by busing increases. And utilizing Infinite Campus, that was huge with reporting. We put our classes as much as we can into Infinite Campus, which is what we use during the school year, made reporting much more efficient, probably more accurate, and it just helped out overall. So we're going to continue utilizing our student services that we have here for us. So that's our report, and I'll take any questions.
I have a question for either one of you or both of you. If we wanted to, I mean, I'm sure we want to, but if we were looking to expand our program in terms of numbers of students and or programming, what would be, from your perspective now, having gone through it for a few years, where do we need to do that, or how can we do that to increase those numbers?
Well, I'll take this one, Mark.
Yeah.
I think the high school is still an area that can see some additional growth, and I think the middle school is an area that we can focus on next year. The middle school has a lot of enrichment courses. Not many of the credit recovery. We did run a health class this year, so there was some credit there. But I think we can look at how can we interest more of that middle school age student to attend. There's a lot of students in middle school I think that we could take advantage of coming to summer school and having a good experience. We just have to find how to tap into that.
The other part of it is we tried a little bit of rebranding at the high school, calling it semester, you know, the combination of summer school and a 3rd semester. I think old school mentality of summer school being like when you fail, and that's why you have to go to summer school and it's a bad thing, when in reality it shouldn't be that way. It should be, hey, it's a great opportunity, maybe I want to free up a section of something so I can take another class, opportunity they're offering, Or maybe it is to get caught back up. You saw those students earned a lot of credits, and they weren't redoing entire classes. They were redoing those learning targets, which they didn't get while they were here during school for whatever reason. And so there was a lot of work by our teachers, especially at the high school I would speak of, that really, they had a class of 12 different kids, and every kid was working on something different. So there was a lot of different prep for the teachers. The teachers did an awesome job meeting the students where they're at, ensuring that they were learning those standards. And then the students had to prove or show mastery at those standards, or at least proficiency, in order to get that passing grade, which converted into those credits that you saw earned. So I think that was a different mind shift, and I think we need to continue that. I think we need to continue advertising and celebrating that opportunity. And then, again, look at what are those different opportunities that students are interested in that we could run through summer school.
Along the same lines a little bit, do we ask students when they sign up for a summer school class, whether it's high school, middle school, or elementary, whether they are residents of our district?
We do.
Do we turn anybody away if they aren't residents of the
We do
district?
not.
Okay.
And so we do count our non-resident students in our report, but our non-resident student minutes do not count towards our FTE.
Okay. Did we have many non-residents?
We did. We had approximately 105 students who were non-resident. In that 105 were a large number of students who actually open enrolled to Waupaca during the school year, but were not able to count their minutes in the summer.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's great for the kids.
It's a great opportunity.
It's just too bad that they can't, you know.
How is this all orchestrated administratively? I mean, is it done, the class selections and who goes in what class and who gets what class and whatever, is that done at one school or is it done at each school? How does that work?
Two different schools. So the Learning Center and the middle school are combined. So we have 3-year-old through 8th grade. And then Mr. Flayton took on the high school, which was 9 through 12, and sometimes 8, depending on the course. If it was a link crew or survivor course, it was incoming freshmen that were listed in here. And so Mr. Flayton had different infinite campus classes that the student registered for, and then we had a separate one for elementary and middle school.
Interested to know, particularly in the high school with the courses that people were taking in semester, are you seeing a difference at the start of the school year for those students? Do you have a sense of?
I don't know. I know in talking to some of the kids during summer school, they realized they should have done a little bit differently during the school year, but they appreciated the fact that they could focus on one course for an extended period of time. And they didn't have to redo the class for 18 weeks. They had to redo those units in which they failed. And so they felt as if they could, okay, all hope isn't lost. I'm not that far off graduation track if I can do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes A, B, and C as well. You know, I think the most the student recovered, I think when we did the numbers, was maybe 3.5 credits. So over the course of a couple of years, this particular student, I believe, was a sophomore. You know, they had 7 Fs, give or take, on their transcript, and they were able to convert those Fs into a passing grade. This is part of the continuous progress mentality is part of a bigger grading reform that we're working on, that mentality as well. And so this was an opportunity to give it kind of a trial run for the staff and for the students. So I think as we continue to watch that grow, we'll see better results out of that. And ideally, you wouldn't wait until summer school to offer those opportunities, but right now it's what we have. That's what we're working towards, making some of those adjustments and changes, but sometimes that is what it is too, because there's things going on for students' lives as well.
Sandy, I think you'll see the results of summer school reflected in the school report card.
For next year?
Well, I think the one that you'll even see next month.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that all of our efforts, fit together like a puzzle, and they're all designed to move our students forward.
That's awesome.
So if I may, I'd like to just point out one last thing is, if you go to the slide that has all the new classes on, summer school is successful because of the teachers who come to us and say, we want to run this fun class, we want to do this. Mr. Flayton, I didn't go out to them and say, hey, we want you to do this stuff. They're coming to us in many cases. And the support staff and the secretaries and the bus drivers and the aides, all of those people make summer school work. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's the people who want to be there, and everybody that's at summer school, they want to be there as employees of the district, and that says a lot about who we are as a district. So summer school doesn't happen like it does without them.
And to orchestrate for that many students takes amazing staff. They did a great job. They really did a great job.
Well, just a comment, I'm always overwhelmed by our numbers when you see them, because when we go to certain meetings for school board representatives, many schools don't have any summer school program, zero. And we have just a very robust program here, and I often think of those other schools, and when we talk about it, they oftentimes make comments like, I guess I wish we could do more of that, because the last thing any of us want to see is our buildings and our staff idle in the summer. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. The more people we can bring in and make this the center of attention, the better off we all are. So I'm real pleased with all of that. It's wonderful.
Good.
Any questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
So the next item is an informational item. This is our enrollment, our third Friday count. The third Friday of September is a day in which DPI tasks us to give a count. And so Mr. Hayek and his staff, along with some of the staff from our IT department, Barb Roosh, worked together to come up with our student count. And the board has an updated document at its place. These numbers have even changed over the last day or so. So you will see some updated numbers at your place that are not reflected in this memo. But as you can see by the summary chart right there, our numbers are plateauing, declining somewhat, as is traditional, and reflected in some of the other graphic representations here. This particular graph also illustrates our students with disabilities compared to our enrollment over time. So just some more information for the board.
Dimitri, we'll have a copy of this for you.
Thank you.
Carol, could you make sure we have one set aside for Dimitri, please? Any questions on the count? None? Okay. The open enrollment numbers fairly consistent with what we've seen in the past?
Yes.
It's down 3, I think, net, but
fairly consistent, yeah. We'd like to, and certainly we believe that our Charter Exploration Center over time will begin to turn some of those numbers inward, and we'll have fewer students desiring to open and roll out, and hopefully more students wanting to open and roll in. All part of the opportunities that we provide here.
I don't want to get too far ahead because it's an item 9 with the preliminary budget overview, but some of your calculations and what was presented as to dollars per student, were they reflecting these numbers, these updated numbers, or the older numbers? I don't know if you had enough time to react to the newer numbers.
The presentation, actually I used projections forward prior to the third Friday count because I needed publication in the paper by last Friday, and they're relatively close.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next item is a standing item for the October board meeting. These are our early graduation requests. So although Principal Waupaca is out ill today, he has submitted this memo for the board's consideration with the students identified in front of you as they have requested an early graduation.
Good question. What is the graduation date for them?
Well,
That was last month, I thought we
already talked about it.
approved
No,
that.
not-
Well,
No, she's talking about early graduates,
Early
early
graduates.
graduates.
They finished the semester.
Oh.
yeah, I would assume it would be the last day of the second semester.
January 18th, I think.
January 18th?
Yes. But we can verify that for you.
Okay, I was just comparing it with the student enrollment. Don't they take another student
Yes,
enrollment?
the second Friday count, yes, they will
Yes.
be present for that count.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously, assuming these are all approved, the individuals are invited to participate in.
Absolutely, yeah. In the ceremony in May or June.
Okay, any questions regarding the summary?
I would move approval of the identified students for early graduation.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion carries.
Next, yeah, Gaggle. So the next item is an informational item, and Gaggle is a filter, I guess is the easiest way to describe it. It's a filter that's applied to our student devices that will send an alert to administration if certain keywords are used. So if there are words used that are going to be indicative of self-harm or violence, for example, those are picked up by the filter, and the administration who have been identified receive an alert, and we receive those alerts at all hours of the day, middle of the night. And so it's part of just another way to keep our students and our staff safe when they're in our buildings and under our care. And Steve, I'm not sure if you want to field the questions or if I missed anything or.
Well, it's more about that mental health piece that we hear so much about in the state that we're kind of trying to help these kids out with. And everywhere, I think, in the state and in the nation, we're struggling with this with our youth. And so this is just a way for us to monitor kind of what they're doing, like Dr. Neen was saying. And it's also, it captures more, so that way it also gets you a live person if it's like a level 3 event. So this would be level 3, a threat to the building or imminent danger to themselves. And you're seeing this throughout the state, pieces like this going out. And so it's part of something bigger, I think. And so we were able to definitely do it this year with some teach grant money that we got reimbursed with. And then we also wrote it into the second round of our safety grant, so we may get funding for that next year again. And we put a procedure in for administrators within those buildings. So if it goes to the middle school, there's a process in place of what the expectations are for like a level 1 and a level 2. So it'd be like cyberbullying and emails. It stops emails actually from going out. So if it's got certain phrases in it, that it doesn't let it even send. And so then it puts in a holding tank so that way it's going to get sent to that kid. Same with pictures and images. And so it's kind of just a way so we can have that conversation with kids before it does that really big harming piece to them.
How does someone get notified then in the middle of the night if it's a level 3?
Level 3 phone tree. So what would happen is it would start with the superintendent, and then it goes to myself and then Maureen, and if they can't get us, then it goes to that building administrator, phone calls. I'll tell them to get to somebody. If it's also a level 3 and they don't get a hold of those individuals right away, it goes right to the police department.
So who's monitoring us then? Technically that would
The company is.
initiate it? Pardon?
The Gaggle company is.
So they would get the alert and then they phone whomever is on the phone, top of the phone tree?
Right, if it was a level 3. If it was obviously like a real emergency right now, they're gonna probably skip calling us and they would call the authorities first and then call us.
So just on a daily basis, if I'm using my Chromebook and I want to tell Mr. Polovitsky over there that I think he looks like something that he shouldn't, what happens in a case like that? Who gets?
We get an email, so what'll happen is, that's how they have it broken down, so like level 1, level 2, and then there's the level 3. Level 1 and level 2, they send to, the 3 of us would get those and they send it to those building administrators. And then we had a conversation last Tuesday at the principals meeting of what needs to happen, so that way it's addressed, so that way we have it on file, documented, that this is what we did with this incident.
But it is not monitoring staff, so if you say that to Mr. Polovitsky, that's between the two of you.
So I see.
I get a call back.
Yeah.
I see it looks actually in their Google Docs too, so if somebody
It does.
uses Google Docs. So how does it work if a student just goes on, you know how Google Docs like auto save?
Mm-hmm.
So a person starts a new document, and they just type some horrific thing, and it auto-saves, and they delete it because it was a joke.
But
Is
Google
that
never
going to-
disappears.
How is that going to be reported?
Yep, it records it, because Google never disappears, so it does a screenshot of everything.
So even
And it
if you
sends
type
it
it
to
2
us.
sentences and delete it right away.
Correct.
Alerts go well. Did the students know that?
After this meeting, they will.
Okay.
Then it'll be sent out versus through IC, through a message. And we've had a couple incidents already where that have been addressed individually through the schools. But we wanted to make sure that went to you first before we sent it out to the families and the students to make sure that they understood now.
So we'll be going to parents.
That'll be going after it's approved. It'll be going to them tomorrow.
How does it work then? Because you can access your Google Docs from home.
Mhm.
So you're in Google Docs because you want to create a document that you're going to share with your friends, but it doesn't have anything to do with your Chromebook or school. Does Gaggle still have access to that?
Anything that's tied through our domain. So if they're logging in with their school account,
I
yes.
see, okay.
So it could be their phone, it could be any device. If they're logged into the Waupaca schools, that's how it would track it.
But they would have to log in
They'd have to use their school credentials.
to get
And they
into
have to
Google
make sure they
Docs.
log out, because if I'm sitting next to you in the computer lab,
Right.
and you decide that you have to use the restroom,
Mhm.
I could go on yours and start a document because you're already logged in.
Mhm.
And I could type something horrific, delete it, and you come back, and all of a sudden somebody's hauling you away and.
And ask.
Well,
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Coach.
that's potential, that could happen.
Don't do that, Mark.
I know. Yeah, I'm just troubleshooting this a little bit.
Yeah, yes.
With the disclosure that will be going out, assuming the board adopts this, are we looking for a return document from the parents acknowledging that they have read or are aware of what this practice is going to be?
I don't think so. In our policy, it's like 360 something, our acceptable use policy. It says right in there that when you use the district's account, you can expect to have no privacy, and that things can be monitored by the district or by how they choose to. So they've already signed that, and they've signed off on that. So this will just be in addition to that this is part of that piece.
Is that normally the one that they
Yes.
have already signed?
Yep, we had them sign it all at the beginning of this year also.
Is that signed by the parents?
Yes.
So following up on that, so we don't need to make any policy change if we adopt this, it's already there.
In fact, this was informational.
Yeah, and technically, we had a filter in place prior to this. It was called Securely, but we've moved away from Securely, and we're now going with Gaggle.
Well, sort of.
Okay.
We still have Securely, but what the problem was I noticed when I first came in here is Securely does the same thing as it would notify if there was an issue. The problem was it only notified me, and it would just send me in an email randomly. So they could send it to me at 1 in the morning on a Friday, and that's assuming then that I'm gonna open up the computer and look at it soon. And in that time frame, talking to enough directors, things happen. And then what's that responsibility at that point? Or how do I get a hold of somebody to say, you need to get a hold of this student? You know, it's just a lot quicker process, instead of having one person getting that information.
And do we have to, are we paying for this service?
Yes. So what we were able to do, through the Teach Grant, we were reimbursed a large sum of money from past work that was being done. So we were able to use that for this, so it was a wash.
And is this on a yearly contract basis?
Yes. So and then we wrote it into the security grant, the second round. And so what we would do then is look at it, is this something that we want to continue? Is this worth the money?
So if we adopt this after tonight's meeting, are we basically going to be revisiting this next October?
We would definitely have to revisit to say this is something we're going to continue or something we're not going to continue.
What is the cost?
They price it out for student, and it's about $11,000
Total.
For the
So-
entire district.
for the district.
Not per student.
So, and the way we looked at it when we talked to them is we had the money because of that grant reimbursement. So it was a good time to look at it And over the years, what's the cost of something bad happening? And we've talked to some directors. There was one up in Waupaca where they caught a girl, that was in a level 3 where she was actually trying to commit suicide, and they were able to save her. And what's that cost? And so I don't know, but we'll see if it's got the bang for the buck, and hopefully we can go forward and kind of have that bigger conversation about student health, mental health.
Will we also be in line in the future for some grant money for this?
I think so, and I think we also, if I'm correct, we were be able to use some of this for our insurance too.
Yeah, we'll parallel that with more secure security because liability for actions. We're working with our attorneys M3 to get a reduction on our cyber policy. What that will be, I don't know. It would be maybe $1,000.
Okay, I was corrected. This is an informational item, not something for board vote. Any other questions? Okay, I am going to step out of the room for the next item, and then, and so people know, it's with regard to, as the agenda shows, credit cards for department leaders. In that I do work with Bank First. I don't want any appearance of any conflict of interest, so I will recuse myself, physically removing myself from the room for any discussion. After that is done, we'll take a very short break so that Mr. Hayek can set up for his presentation on the budget. Okay.
Don't go far. Okay, so Greg, do you want to
Sure,
speak to this?
sure. So there are a number of circumstances where department leaders or building principals have a need for access to district resources, but the purchase order process is it's driven by time, and so there are circumstances in which they don't have time as a luxury. And so in conversations with Bank First, Mr. Hayek and I were presented with an opportunity to utilize the credit cards in the amounts that are identified in the memo. And it's the recommendation that those credit cards be made available to the various positions and building personnel.
So the funding for all of them total comes from where exactly?
I would defer that to.
The funding, well, basically it's just a line of credit. So we already had a couple district credit cards. So we're Bank First is simply offering us a line of credit. So it's within the budget. It's after the fact, after the purchase is made, it's linked back to the PO system for our auditing purposes. So basically, it's for convenience if individuals are at conferences and such. And we tried diligently to get credit cards from other entities, and we were very unsuccessful, quite frankly. And the district credit card right now, so to speak, the master of the credit cards it's linked to my Social Security number. I mean, so these are not linked to my Social Security number. So our credit's good, but certainly linked to my Social Security number is.
Well, hopefully your credit is good.
Well, my credit's really good.
So I'm assuming that when they're using these credit cards, if we go through the PO system, those bills are going to be paid immediately, so we won't be charged interest on our purchases?
Absolutely. They're paid monthly now with the singular or the maybe 2 credit cards, so they're paid monthly statement. The monthly statement is paid in full every month.
So we never have to pay any interest on these?
These don't, the purchases made with the credit card, I would imagine, don't always involve a purchase order. Is that true? Or?
But they will.
Not always. I mean, but then after the fact, they're linked to a purchase order. They'll create that so it's into the system.
It's just not in advance.
Correct.
So just like you would get your monthly credit card statement, you'd align your receipts to that credit card statement, then we could fill out a purchase order for that credit card statement, as long as all those receipts and
Got it.
documentation
I see.
was there, present.
Who's going to reconcile cards then? Or the statements would come to you then?
We come
Carl?
to Linda, of course, everybody else does the work in the office, so Linda does a fabulous job, and she'll be reconciling that.
So she'll be collecting receipts from everybody?
Correct. And she'll get the master billing policy. She has all the billing coming to her directly, so if there's no snafus that one's sitting perhaps on a principal's desk or something like that, she'll get the master billing, and she'll coordinate all the 10 credit cards, which is overwhelming each month, and reconcile those.
So if, I'm just looking at numbers up there for a moment, high school technology department, they're in the process of building their house, and they need something right away because of the weather, let's say, and it costs a couple $1,000s. They're able to get it with the credit card, but what if that dollar amount goes over the 5,000? Is somebody watching that, or does that card then stop?
Stops.
It stops.
We can monitor the credit cards online to raise and adjust those accordingly.
Okay.
And so simply, we're just really getting a line of credit. We do banking with Bank First, Farmers, and as well. And so we have, so it's a relationship we already established.
So those numbers that are there, they are monitored by the bank basically, and then the card would just not go through.
And by the district as well. So we can raise those or lower those accordingly. And if indeed, let's, for instance, the high school technology department ran into a snag that the 5,000 wasn't enough, they could come to the district office and get the school district credit card, which you can see that's
Sure.
a larger amount and stacked accordingly.
Okay. And since we're, excuse me, since we're going to initiate this, I'm assuming in this year, a little bit like we talked about in terms of the gaggle, are we going to revisit this then, say in a year's time, to see if those numbers have to be changed, or what do you think is going to happen in the future?
We certainly could. If we see that they're not feasible, those lines. In fact, if we see those that they're not feasible in the near future, which we don't believe they are, we'll bring them to the board and say we want to adjust it accordingly. Maybe some will go downward and some will go up. But right now, we believe from monitored the individual purchasing, we thought through conferences and things such as that, how much they would need, hotel rooms and things that we can. So we tried to put a number to each entity and not trying to make it too vast.
Right. Well, I know just for myself, it would be interesting to see in a year's time how that kind of played out. And not,
we should.
Just because I would be curious to know. How
And
much.
who's the keeper of the card? The principal? And is the charter school, obviously that is included in the chain credit card? Correct. They didn't need one.
They may want their own as a separate credit card at some point.
We certainly could add one. We'll bring that to the board.
Yeah, it would
I think
make things easier maybe.
Yeah. It'll have to go before their governance council to find out if they want a line of credit, so. I have a question. You mentioned in your memo that you're developing an acceptable use document for card holders. I feel much more confident seeing that before approving, although if you could describe what's to be included in that acceptable use policy, what kinds of things it will cover, that.
Sure. So, and I'm going to turn to Carl here in just a moment again, but many districts use P-cards, purchase cards, and credit cards, P-cards. They're fairly similar. So the reason I'm bringing that to the board is we're not going to be the first district to have P-cards or to use credit cards. And so there are other districts out there that have developed acceptable use policies.
Mm-hmm.
And I would project, and this is where I'll turn to Carl, that acceptable use is basically going to parallel the acceptable use for technology, only we're going to be talking about the credit card use. We're not going to be making personal purchases with these credit cards. These are for school business use. All records must be kept. Certainly there are going to be some purchases that will be not allowed, and others that may have other requirements. But that's my general understanding of what that acceptable use is going to look like, Carl, and I don't know if you...
Yeah, I think that's well stated. I think right now, even the expense reimbursement, there's individuals that use their own personal credit card, but on expense reimbursement, there's no alcohol, it's monitored, there's a multitude of things that's stated already on that. And when they're coming through and defined by Linda through the office, she'll go through those line by line. If they're not acceptable, then that would be triggered back to employee would be charged for that. Something would that would be a flag, but the policy would just overlay the practice.
And so that would be
Basically
stated.
added product.
That would be stated so that the people who have the cards would know if they don't have the receipts or it's inappropriate, then it's on them.
Absolutely.
Right, and it'll be more of a, and it's just semantics, I'm sure, but it won't be a policy per se, it'll be more of a procedure or an agreement, if you will.
So,
I'm sorry.
So the people who get the cards will have an opportunity to read and sign it, and we'd have that?
Yes, that document would be maintained by the business office.
And along the same lines, if we approve this and move forward, when, I mean, would that be ready to be issued, say, this week already? Or,
Yes.
yeah, it's all ready to go, just needs approval.
And would the acceptable use policy be ready by then too, also? I guess I'm concerned about not having that in place before, even with all the understandings.
Yeah, I think, we could try to fast track that agreement, that understanding, so that we've got that in place prior to their use.
Just so there aren't any surprises for the people who have the cards.
Right.
Not that it sounds like it's going to be such standard operating procedures that.
I just have one question. Suppose as we go along and it's kind of toward the end of the year, and certain accounts are running low on money and things are spent or not spent, whether it's in the budget or not, and there's a large purchase, and then all of a sudden we find out that that money's actually not in the budget, it wasn't budgeted for, because in the normal purchase order system, they think that when a person does a purchase order, somebody looks to say, is this still in the budget, or is it outside the budget? How's that going to work at the end of the year if all of a sudden a bunch of people, and all of a sudden we find out that these purchases are actually outside the budget, but they've purchased the item?
I would say literally that we've been using the credit card and passing it out to everybody for years at the district. And the principals are monitoring their budget, and so are the individuals. So what happens is they know what's in their budget, and the principal can deny literally that purchase prior to going. I mean, they don't even have to give them the credit card. So, and the principals have been fairly good. All their budgets come in relatively accurate. So this is just more having more 10 cards rather than maybe 2 cards. So the process has been going, just individuals be coming from, as you know, from other buildings to the central office, we're handing them their credit cards. So the mechanism is really fairly the same as it has been with them. So we don't anticipate budgets being blown out because of perhaps 9 more cards or 8 more cards. Just convenience more so. Because when they're in Chicago or they're in Minneapolis, something comes up.
So do we need to make a motion?
Any more discussion?
Or yes, that's the idea.
Yep.
So if we make a motion, and I before I would even, I'm looking at Sandy, because how would we work in the policy that would govern this?
For the acceptable use
Acceptable use,
document.
would it be based upon the motion that we would accept the use of credit cards for the list that was given here, contingent upon having a policy for acceptable use in place, something to that? Would you feel good with that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the administration understands that you want an acceptable use agreement document in place before the cards are used. So we will move forward with the creation of that document.
All right.
So I think for sake of the motion and clarity, if you are giving approval for the credit cards themselves, we understand that we need the agreement in place.
And so in your motion, do you want to specify a dollar amount? I see that those add up to $45,000 roughly, or do you just want to make it as
as presented?
Yeah, I'm just.
I don't know what it would, I mean, I would say it, I don't care what the total is, quite frankly, Mark, only because I was just going by what the numbers were there. So if the motion reflected the numbers as presented.
That's fine.
Then it would be the same total, whatever that is. So,
May I just mention to Megan Sanders that it was asked whether the CDC would want its own credit card, and there was some discussion that is likely to be the case, and that you would be talking with the governance council about that.
Yes.
So that could come back later.
and that could come back as an individual, something
Yes.
later. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion then that the district allow credit card usage for all of the personnel as listed, as presented, and for the dollar amounts as presented. And I guess we don't have to talk about the acceptable use, knowing that's going to be in place. That'll be my motion.
Okay. Here's a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Dimitri?
I'm sorry, it's kind of cutting in and out. I didn't catch that.
There is a motion and a second that we accept the approved list of 10 credit cards and the limits placed on them, with the stipulation that there will also be a use agreement that will come with them.
That wasn't part of the motion, though. That was just an understanding.
An understanding,
Yeah.
right, with an
Right.
understanding. And we've all voted, so are you opposed?
In favor.
Or in favor? In favor? Okay. So all in favor. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dimitri.
Take a minute break.
Yeah.
Okay.
5-minute break, Dimitri.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. Going to just hang on the line, Dimitri, while we change over computers.
I wasn't here.
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just watching the
So how's everything in Charlotte?
It was good. It was good. Yeah, had a great trip.
Weather didn't affect you any way?
No, the weather was good. And then last week we went to Florida.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we didn't use our station this year because of the building.
Oh, yeah.
So we were going to lose our week. So we went to,
Okay.
it was a week of nothing on the beach, no breeze, big ocean waves, lots of seafood. I read 3 books.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And
so
probably not
it was
too busy yet.
No, it's not busy enough. There was no traffic, everything, you know. and
No, there's no money following them, so they could be a private school student, you know, like yours.
Coming to Pine Tree. I was just out there reading the various posters at the wall.
So, anyway, so how about,
Has friends for years who live on that, resident for years. He was there, stood up at their wedding 100 years ago, and, but they're neighbors, so.
go see that?
Yeah, we'll go see that first night trip. So that's what we're
You
gonna be
know what,
doing.
it should be beautiful. We're, Kelly turns, Kate's birthday is coming too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly turns 40 in November, so our whole family is going to we all are, we
Yeah, which month? In October? Well, that's,
Are you?
well, yeah, we'll be gone. I'm gonna miss the board meeting. So be it. Yeah.
So yeah, we're going now. Oh, good. South Carolina is warmer than Massachusetts.
Maybe a little wetter.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but you know what? We don't care. We've got to Charlotte once, and none of the rest of them have. And they were like, we're going to go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
But it's because I told them today. It's Halloween weekend. Well, we were
Oh, yeah.
supposed to go November 4th, but that was Halloween weekend, and everything was airfares, hotels and stuff. So we just decided. And Bill's going.
Good. How's it going?
Not sure. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Yeah. No, I mean, yes and no. My John and Mark. This would be nice.
Yeah.
And
I was that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
got everything.
That's the way to do it. Oh my gosh. I think you're.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Oh my God, the Ferris wheel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. The man
Yeah, it's all like that. Grade school, but like I can see all the parts, it doesn't sound right. Yeah. So, what I'll do is I'll put in because you know, if I would be like, this is that, but again, everything could work, anybody. Everything what I wish they had said. Whatever it be, it'll be conference. So the only way it should be possible on the whole time is to get there.
So I kind of believe they were
I'll take it in there.
Because it was $170. They allowed you to charge? Yeah. See, and that's the kind of thing that
What I is the rule, is what they need to be. Now, we do that.
so what would have been great?
Showers, it's all.
So finding out if they then all you got to carry down big bill. Right. Well, that's what I mean, if they're willing to say, bill, and just bill it.
Now his credit cards.
That would solve a lot of problems. But yeah, if they're gonna pay it, then the short company, somebody will.
Where are you gonna go first?
David gave us
Jay Max, you did something.
started like Monday.
That was, I swear, I've not laughed that hard.
Like, what a beautiful.
Yeah, well, sure. Yes. It always is.
Okay, Carl's coming back in. I think we have all the members of the board in here, albeit not necessarily listening. Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 2018-19 preliminary budget overview. With this, I will turn it over to Mr. Hyatt.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I read recently that the difference between competition versus creativeness. The essence of mankind is not competition, it's creativeness. Competition attempts to be like. So if you're trying to be like something, you're trying to be better than, but you're still trying to be like something else. But creativeness, and I heard Betty talk about this, is attempts to be unlike. Competition exists on the plane that makes you want to have a better home, better than Jack Smith, a better car than Jack Smith, a better job than Jack Smith. But you're still in the same plane. It leads you into a suffocating trap of not wanting to be different, but wanting to be the same, only better. It imposes upon you a scale of values that really is not your own, but it's somebody else's. Creativeness, on the other hand, is a world of your own. If you were to take a brush and a palette in your hand right now and paint a picture in oil, as a result, good, bad, or indifferent, by the world standards, would be your very own. The finest artist living, they couldn't literally replicate. So conformity and competition is really kind of death knells to creativeness. Creativeness is expansion, while competition is usually narrow in comparison to the light. Sir Ken Robinson, one of the great educational leaders of today, and he was at our state convention, he says creativity involves putting your imagination to work. In a sense, creativity is implied imagination. Education and training are the keys to the future. A key can be turned in two directions. It can be turned one way, and you lock resources away. Comparing. Turn it the other way, and you realize resources and give people back to themselves. Creativeness. He further states that the real role of leadership in education is not and should not be command and control. The role of leadership is climate control, creating a climate of possibility. The charter school, for instance. If you do that, people will rise to it and achieve things that you completely did not anticipate and couldn't have expected. So curiosity is the engine of achievement. Daniel Pink, who was at the state convention, one of the educational, basically creativity individuals, said the future belongs to a different kind of person with a different kind of mind. Artists, inventors, storytellers, creative and holistic right-brain thinkers. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. So creativeness, what does our district do? If you look at our charter school, for instance, the Career Exploration Center, it's about environmental, it's about strings, it's about creating. You look at our Starbucks Cafe, nobody else in the entire 40 to 21st school districts has this all day for the children where they can come in free will. And it links to our budget. It actually helps our food servers. We have telehealth rooms, which I most recently did a presentation last week on. The telehealth rooms offer a multitude of options for mental health and awareness, and everybody using their app to potentially get their health. And it saves money for the district fiscally, but it also agrees with wellness. So, the budget is a creation of opportunity. Children learn from what they see. We need to set an example of truth in action.
I guess that everybody runs down that unknown road, trying to get someplace, feels like home. Trying to find somebody who feels the same way you feel inside. We were young and foolish and hopeful too. So many days got away where you got knocked down. Some things feel like you finally can see. This is my hometown. This is my family. This is where I'm from. This is where the world will be. This is my
stakeholders, I think we think about what is creativity. If you think about all those businesses in town, absolutely creative to be in their innovation and that they bring to the table, and they're part of this community. And when we want something, all the universe conspires to help you to achieve it. Everything we do is matters. It's linked, it's connected, it causes change. You see that community, and those stakeholders are teachers, and everything makes us go collectively. If you look at the purpose of the annual budget, it is to create educational opportunities for our children that will impact the future. You can see the circle. The circle has literacy, the student at the center. You can see engaged thinker, the ethical citizenship, and the entrepreneur skills. You can see creativity and innovation, critical thinking, collaboration and leadership, lifelong learning, digital and technology fluency and communication, so social and cultural. So it's all linked and all connected. The annual budget basis is really a financial plan based upon those priorities set throughout the year. The annual budget adjustments that are made prior to the final certification of general state aid, and the property tax money to support the budget is submitted for consideration at the budget hearing. So what are some priorities? Well, we focus on balancing all those needs of all those stakeholders you just saw, plus students, staff, and community members to continue to deliver the best education possible. Continue to assess the health insurance costs in conjunction with the Health Insurance Committee to reduce costs. Over the 7 or 8 year period, this district has reduced its health insurance costs by 32%. 32%, while the industry was going up about 52% on the slide early on. That helps our budget. That committee, collective of the teachers making those decisions. And we had M3 in here for that Health Insurance Committee, and I think Betty and Sandy were there. And one of the things they analyzed, they showed that we're in such a position that a lot of districts are in HRAs and HSAs. We're not there. And we have not a high deductible. We have a great insurance policy still compared to the public entities of the 421st school districts. But comparison's not that good, right? Okay. So implement policies and procedures that ensure fiscal responsibility. Continue to align the food service requirements by offering nutritious, quality meals and ensure those qualifying for those free and reduced meals get them. We have a high free and reduced area going up this year. It's gone up from the past. So we're concerned, we're monitoring that. It's probably on your report that's just been passed out or in your packet. So that's a concern for us. Providing continuous environmental safety compliance in conjunction with the school district safety zone. Keeping a safe physical environment for all our students is crucial. So we continue the exploration of energy and conservation methodologies. So anytime we put on an HVAC or anything new to the unit, we're not just looking for Energy Star. We're looking for something that would be conducive for reducing our electrical or gas bills as well, and delivers the wattage that we need to provide things such as generators and things such as that. We provide financial solvency by continuing to prioritize the budget items that are in the best long-term interest of the students and taxpayers. So we're continuing to maintain and improving the district's quality buildings. We have quality buildings, in this district. And you can see even the age of this, 2000, it's in great shape. So we have to keep our infrastructure and our grounds intact. This year, not only do we build a fabulous athletic complex, we look to the arts as well. We've noticed that our sound system was earmarked in our 15-year maintenance plan that when Steve Ballman looked at it, it was antiquated. I'm not even sure if it was a DOS system. And we checked for safety and hanging lights. Now it's state of the art. So we have a great community theater, so that's upgraded. And our career exploration center is spelled wrong. That's really great. I need some student learning. But the new pupil contracted transportation services with Go Right Way really helped this budget because it saved about $230,000. And a lot of that had to do with our liability insurance, the lower cost. And then in conjunction with that, we've done a few things. We sold the maintenance building. So when we sold the maintenance building, we were able to make, I would say, an agreement with the individual, and he allowed us to stay in the building for a year. So when we went to Go Right Way, where the transportation building, they're building a new facility, we were able to charge Go Right Way a rent per month to use our facility. So as this transition goes forward, we're making some good fiscal decisions. So we provide, of course, support and teacher continuous quality professional development. You've seen that on Wednesdays, you see that in the test scores, you see that in the high achievement. We have a safe school employee required training for all staff that's online now, and there's more training for them than ever. That includes things such as bloodborne pathogen exposure, child abuse, and for reporting to the array of things that they're required to have done by October 15, including myself, and I'm not even done yet, so please give me a little break. I might complete those on time. So continue evaluating enrollment trends and long-term budget plans for the school district. So we know there's always roadblocks. There's an election. So what happens? We'll have to see. We also have, there was a deal made with another private entity and through the last round in the government decision making. And that will take a lot of money out of revenue. So how much revenue will there be for the state of Wisconsin in the next biennial budget? That's an unknown, but we still could have things change throughout the years, such as state law regarding finance might be altered in such a way to reduce categorical funding. Maybe it's going to increase categorical funding, but you can see that part of the process is any budget, there's disclaimers and laws and regulations of the state or federal government. Yeah, they can render these budget assumptions incomplete or inaccurate. So we projected earlier, I did, that district enrollment would decrease by 13 students from last year. We can see there's an ebb and flow always, and there's a revenue limit, third Friday count methodology, and a head count. Basically, the revenue cap, third Friday count is a mechanism that actually counts full FTEs. Some students, such as summer school students, are maybe calculated at 0.4%, and this year, 4-year-old kindergarten is 0.6. So in the whole calculations, you see head count on the third Friday head count, third Friday count. When it gets into the revenue cap, it changes. It goes down because of those percentages. And it is assumed that 130 students will come in basically under the open enrollment law, and that 134 students will leave. That's slightly higher now, according to slightly higher, basically people coming in. So it's less people coming in. So that gap is, but the budget can withstand that. So one of the things you'll see in open enrollment, the individuals in open enrollment, which is kind of a strange entity, maybe you know, the concept of if the individual open enrolls into this district, we count them in our head count. And the people leaving, we count our residents. So we basically count the opposite. We count our residents going out, correct? Yeah, so basically we have 134 students going out. We're counting those 134 students as our students because they're residents. And the 126 coming in, we're not counting, correct? Okay, I want to make sure I always reverse those, and so, which is great because it's going to reverse in those numbers. But so that calculates it. It artificially inflates your revenue cap. But then the DPI comes back and they charge you. So for those students, and it's basically for the incoming revenue for all those students, 134 leaving, they charge you $980,000 as an expense every year at the end of the fiscal year. And you have 126 coming in, they charge you they give you 900,000. So you have this net. So you almost literally, the revenue cap doesn't move as fast as that dollar figure. So really, you want to kind of narrow that. You want to flatline that. You want to keep open enrollment basically flat or increased. So the district 4-year-old kindergarten, I talked about that. See, that's 0.5 FTE. We raised that just by a few minutes, just by adding about 10 minutes to the day to 0.6. So that added more actually FTE. The district's new charter school basically opened in September, of which $154,000 this year is earmarked to support that with grant dollars will be applied. Health insurance costs this year went up 2.6%. A lot of people were like, oh, it went up 2.6%. Other districts are going up about 8%, 9%. That was like a high year for everybody here. When we go to the table, we say we want 0%, and we've been very successful. But this year, if you think of $3 million worth of medical expenses, let's say that's our bill for the year, well, we also know that $1.5 million were for pharmaceuticals. And you know the pharmaceutical company, how much pharmaceuticals are. So you can see where if pharmaceuticals, how much did your medication go up? So if you're, you can see that and they're going up at a ratio of about 18%. So for us to have a 2.6% increase, keeping our same insurance, basically tweaking a little bit, was pretty good. It's basically a win-win. So we replaced positions due to retirement and resignation. So there's 20.75. That's the most since Act 10 change for the district. It might even be a little bit more. We had 10 support staff. And 1 high school principal, 1 middle school principal, 1 technology director sitting in our room, fine man, and our director of teacher and learning, Mark, as well. So those are kind of our changes. Added positions, we added 3.7 teachers, 1.5 support staff, 1 director of athletics, that's Aaron, and then WSC assistant principal. Basically, we just dropped the title of the dean, assistant principal, and now it's, or the dean of students to assistant principal, and it was a slight increase in basically a salary. Non-replaced 4.25 teachers and 0.5 support staff. So you can net these. You can see we actually reduced teachers than we had. So where does the money come from? And people say money doesn't grow on trees. And I thought about that. It really does grow on trees. It's paper, right? So, I mean, this is what I do. I think about things like that, which is crazy, right? But so school finance regulations specify the amount of dollars the district is permitted to raise from property tax income and state aid. This amount is a revenue limit. This really governs everything. I mean, we can say, oh, we need more revenue, but this really takes us and tells you what you can have. And so if you see the school district of Waupaca receives 94% of its money from these 2 sources. We receive about 53% from local property taxes. And we receive from state sources about 40%. That's 94% of our revenues. So you can say, well, let's increase our revenues. Well, the revenue cap drives that. You really can't get money elsewhere, but where can you get it? You can get it maybe you can find some grant money, other sources, or some inter-district payments where, like, we have agreements with Iola to basically educate their students, or in federal sources. You can see federal sources, which drives a lot of the laws, is about 2.3%, and that's continuously gone down. So even though we have grants, that's continually not an uptick. So where is the money spent? The expenditures, there's really 2 different perspectives, and everybody's fascinated by this because who doesn't want to hear about school accounting, but I'm going to go through it anyways. Expenditures by function is one methodology. We have about probably 3,000-4,000 accounts within the district, and there could be more. And quite frankly, the expenditure by function is the purpose for which the expenditure is made, and the expenditure by object is the type of goods and purchase services. So if you break that out, you can see that 51% is really for instruction and 45% for pupil and staff support. But I always like to point out, everything's about instruction and education. Because if you didn't have libraries and psychologists and counselors and nurses and therapists and transportation and co-curricular, I mean, what do you have left? So 45% is for the support aspect, and the non-program is really the open enrollment numbers and their district payments and maybe tuition waivers going out. If you take that graphic, you can see it's a simplistic pie chart. Division of expenditures by object, wages and benefits basically support 75% of this budget, and 25% is non-salary, looking at that perspective. But that's really common. In fact, we're right in line with the rest of the districts. And don't you love this bean counters pie chart? It took me all night to find that, just because you guys are looking like, that's impressive, I can tell just looking at you. And so expenditure by object is really a 75-25. So the school district of Waupaca's property tax and mill rate required to support this 2018-19 budget right now is projected will change slightly by October 30th to $16,405,492. You do a mill rate analysis, and that's a mill rate is basically $1,000. The mill rate is driven $1,000 of property valuation. In 14-15, it was $11.16 per $1,000 of property valuation. 15-16, $11.63, $10.98, $10.79, and then projected this year 10 cents decline. So if you really do a calculation, it went down 10 cents, so that's really a decrease of $10. So it's really basically stayed the same. You look at other home values, you can see if you have a $250,000 home, it goes down about $25. That's our projections right now. That would change slightly, but it won't change too much. You look at the mill rate over the years, you can see the causing, we were lower here in 2009 and 10. You can say, well, why was our mill rate lower then and it's $10 now? Well, we were receiving a lot more general aid in that point. So general aid, there's three factors to that revenue cap. The revenue cap is general state aid, property valuation, and that third Friday count. They work in unison, like a harmony, like music. And so one of the things you can see if we compare ourselves to other districts, and this is why it's not a good comparison. So you can see that Clintonville, Manawa, and these New London, you can say, well, their mill rate's been lower than our district. Well, would you do that comparison? Well, what's the difference? Well, their property valuation certainly probably went up during that time, and they all were receiving more general state aid. And the school district of Waupaca during that same period of time was taxing below the revenue cap by about $1.8 million. So that mill rate could have been higher. If you do a tax levy comparison breakout though, from the last 2 years, you can see that basically, I'll point at this one for the board, it's 16.2 million last year was big, 16.2 was our overall tax levy. This year we're projecting, or I'm projecting that 16.4. If you look, think about that for a little bit. So we had a 2.5% salary increase across the board for all our staff. We had health insurance go up 2.6%. We have a revenue cap that's pretty much flat. And we have other expenses going up about 3% overall. As we shift, it's really like, it really is like Crescendo's budget is. So the concept of some of those ebbs and flows of the 0.6, some of those grant monies, as they kind of flow through, we're able to get to this bottom line. So actual tax dollars collected, you can see it's been continuously going up. And you say, well, that's not good. And it isn't, right? But one of the things, why does it go up? Because our general aid has been continuously going down. So the revenue cap is really kind of a balancing act. If your aid goes down, you're allowed to raise your taxes up to go to that cap. So I'll show you the property valuation history, and this drives that mill rate. And it drives the mill rate. Why? Why does it drive it? The 1.5 billion, you can see that 1.5 billion, that going up 1% will drive that mill rate down because it's such a huge number. Our revenue cap is basically, we're talking about a $25 million budget. That's 1.5 billion. So that number would certainly drive that mill rate in one direction or another. Here's the school district's general aid loss trend. And you can say a lot of times everybody's ecstatic because, we received more aid in this fiscal year, $28,000, you can see 13, 14. Well, what happened these other years? I mean, they're always comparing it to the last prior year. We're losing general state aid, $854,000, $787,000, $1,750,000. Oh, and now we're getting $23,000. We never got that back. And so then it continues. We lose some more aid. And then, we actually got a little more aid these 2 years. And then down again is the projection of the July count. So you can see they continue. What does that do? It takes basically this average is about $3.8 million worth of loss of general state aid over that period of time. So at the same time, you have the opportunity or the ability to make up for that differential through your property taxes. So at the same time, this district basically made up for it in $3.9 million. You say, well, we took $204,000 more. But think about this. During this period of time, we were taxing below the allowable revenue authority. So at the same time, if you add all up, we could have literally taxed this tax base $16.3 million more. So we only took what we need. So at the same period of time, you can see, we increased for the general aid loss, $204,000, but we could have taxed $16.3 million more to the cap. And so that's something to think about if you hear that in the ethers and the wind out there. So we only take what we need. The majority of school districts in the state of Wisconsin, there's only about 7 on maybe 9 last year, taxed below the allowable revenue cap. We were one of those for a multitude of years, and we were able to do a multitude of things. Annual salary increases, infrastructure upgrades, roof replacements, safety, parking lot renovations. We were even able to build an athletic complex, but not many school districts could do that, to at least tax below the allowable revenue limit by at least $500,000. It's not common. Usually everybody goes to the cap. So you can see over that period of time, we were taxing $950,000 below the cap, 1.5, 2.7, 2.8, 2.7, 2 million, 1.8, 1.2, and basically $500,000. So if you look at last year, 9 years of averaging taxing below the allowable revenue limit, basically by 1.8 million. Last year, because that's the most current data we have, because the annual budget from 17-18 isn't solidified to DPI at this point, you can see that we're one of 9 districts, or a few districts, that we tax below the allowable revenue limit by at least $500,000. And in that, inclusive in that is like Madison. And Madison has a $3 million budget. So they accidentally, if they have a $3 million budget and they're trying to do the analysis of getting their revenues and expenses to say, well, yeah, they came up $2 million under the revenue cap, but that usually doesn't happen. $2 million to them is 0.69%. So that kind of ebbs and flows. So they're in there and out there for a while, but they're so huge, that's the way it goes. So sound fiscal management. So since 2011, there have been 262 referendums to exceed the revenue cap. Since 2011, the school district of Waupaca has operated under the revenue cap by at least $1 million. Infrastructure, ongoing upgrades, facilities well maintained. Safety and security initiative installation have been really state of the art. If you think about back when the Sandy Hook happened, we upgraded all our safety and key cards and things such as that. So it's been done. The athletic complex was built. We didn't exceed the revenue cap to do so. Staff salaries have been increasing annually. Professional development has been a constant and more so now. High student achievement. So only 5 districts out of 424 school districts in a similar financial position has done this. We're in a great position financially. You can look at what are the reasons. Health insurance. That's what I was talking about. Over this period of time, we have a 32% reduction. That gave us room to do things such as this and put money into infrastructure or professional development. Other districts were increasing at 56% during that same period of time. That's an 88% gap. Health insurance is your second biggest, basically, ticket item after salaries. So you can see 75% of that budget is salary and fringe. And so if you can control your health insurance cost, you're in pretty good shape. And what else have we done? So our long-term debt. You can see this year why the taxes have gone down somewhat. There was a fund balance at $128,000 this year. I was talking to Carol Worth, and one of the things you cannot cure, our debt is dropping off in Fund 39, our long-term debt. And that's really a congratulation. It's like paying off for your house payment. Think about it. I mean, it's huge. And that's gone. And we were able to take, this was really, this taxation or this revenue, which could have been about 2.9, but we were able to reduce that with the fund balance and net that to 0 at the end of the fiscal year. So you can see this is the last year for our debt service. This will be the last Fund 39 debt. We do have Fund 38, but that's short-term debt. We have 3 years left. We were able to double down on 2 years. So basically we have 3 years left on $216,000 per year. So basically we're about $611,000 in a short-term actually debt for our state trust fund loan. So what else have we done? So we have a maintenance plan. And our maintenance plan, basically, we follow it. It's not an absolute. It's basically it's kind of an ebb and flow. It's kind of a crescendo too, as well. So sometimes you need roofs and gutters, so you earmark that into the budget, and you try to use that every year. So one of the things I've always said is it's easier to fix, like JFK said, the roofs when the sun is shining, not when all of a sudden you need it, and it's the middle of winter, and oh boy, you have to move 700 kids, where are you going to move them? So it's really to keep your infrastructure intact. So we have roofs and gutters, generators, and we're looking at upgrading that high school generator soon. And HVAC boilers at each location, plumbing replacements, and we have pavement resealing, pavement, bathroom fixtures, windows. So we projected outwards as to budgetarily in our maintenance budget, light fixtures, servers, security wirings, telephone, and we did that upgrade. So we're good on the voice over IP, flooring and walls and the multitude lockers. So this is part of the reason we've kept intact with our infrastructure. So one of the things with current education costs, well, are we spending too much or are we spending too little? And one of the most reliable methodologies basically for cost comparison is from DPI is the current educational cost comparison, so which is overall instruction and instructional support cost per student. And then they take it a step further, the total education cost, which includes transportation and facility cost per student. So if we look at those surrounding school districts, the same ones that I used for the Millwright, Clintonville, Iola, Manawa, and Waupaca, Waupaca, and Wild Rose, you can see that here's the analysis of breaking that out. How does that look in a simplistic pie chart? You can see the state average is $11,163 per student, $10,896 for those surrounding school districts, and $10,601 for Waupaca. If you do the TEC cost, add the facilities and infrastructure, you can see that 12.5, 12.2, 12.7, relative to what I was looking for is, are we way high? Is this 15,000 or is this 4,000? So as we move forward, we're right in line, and we're able to do a multitude of things. And this data is 2016-17. Again, that's because the DPI reports are analyzed. We did a multitude. We turn in our DPI reports, which are due in September. They're not uploaded yet. They're not totally verified. They're certified, but that's why this is the most current data. CISA, so let's look at 35 school districts. Same principle applies. So all the CISA 5 districts are comparable route. You can see same principle applies. When we're here, are we too high or are we too low? And we're right basically in line with the state average, CISA 5 average, and Waupaca, so overall cost. So telling the truth, and I'm talking about enrollment, and nothing, and making someone cry is better than telling them a lie and making someone smile. So enrollment is a constant decline. And one of the things everybody sometimes say, well, let's increase enrollment. And we're trying with our charter schools, and we've increased our enrollment through our summer school, which is fantastic. People don't realize how fantastic that is. There's districts larger than us, and remember, only a few years back, we had about 40 FTEs. Now we have 80. That's amazing. Plus you're getting student engagement collectively all through the summer, and you'll be able to do a multitude of things. So that's wonderful. But what makes people, the school, people aren't having children, first of all. And there's only about 3 or 4 school districts in the state of Wisconsin that are increasing. And one of them is Sun Prairie, for instance. And Sun Prairie is increasing too rapidly that the revenue cap can't keep up with it. It's a 3-year rolling average. So all of a sudden, they don't have enough room. So what do? They have to build. And what happens if that bubble goes? They have an empty building. So if you're not declining too fast or not increasing too fast is usually the key. But there's in the revenue cap formula, there's a methodology to hold harmless. So each year they give you a declining enrollment exemption that keeps you whole. So it doesn't automatically drop because you lost 50 kids. It doesn't all of a sudden say, oh, okay, we're going to take X amount of dollars per pupil away from you. That's not the way that revenue cap works. It really doesn't work like $9,000 times 50 kids, and that's the amount of money you lose. Now, what they do is if you lost 50 kids, they basically keep you hold harmless to the last year and make up that in a declining enrollment exemption. So that's,
Carl, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you go back about 4 slides?
Sure.
It's the one that has the long list of, from the DPI, that one.
This one?
The third column over, facility cost per member.
Correct.
When you look at our Waupaca versus the group average or statewide total, and compared to many others, we are quite high in that area.
Yes, we are. And I think Mark brought that up today. We've done a multitude of things with our facilities without going to revenue cap, and I think some of the things were like HVAC $40,000 chillers every year. We've done parking aspect. Over the years, we've been actually higher. And I would say that we put money back into our infrastructure more so than other ones. I think what happens is other districts are in such a bind that they can only really do it with salaries, and they go to referendum to increase to take care of the facilities costs, because all of a sudden you see that all the time. They literally have to go for an operational referendum to get maybe upgrade boilers or upgrade or put a roof on. And I think we've done that, and that's part of the reason we're all
Would this, since that is a snapshot of this 2016-17 year, would that include or be elevated because of the athletic field?
No, it will probably be elevated the next.
What did we do in 16-17?
16-17.
Your recollection that
my recollection.
high.
16-17. I think we did a major roof replacement on WLC. We did 3 sections, fully adhered membrane, and I think we did a high school parking resealing and repavement.
Didn't we do the WLC, the change with the bus lanes and all of that sort of thing?
It was the 15, yeah, the bus, and that was about $270,000 in there as well. So we did that safety.
So those would be reflected on that facility cost?
Correct. And transportation, we may have, if the transportation is higher, we may have a little bit more demographic area or geographical area to cover than other districts. But I'm not sure looking at that. But yeah, the facility cost would be higher.
Okay, thank you.
So these are just basic projections going forward, and they've been relatively accurate. It's basically attrition methodology, and you can see that next year, we'll see my early projections, and like I said, it's comparing them to applied population laboratory, and I'm not that much different, and I've seen them in the past, so I'm thinking at this point, conservative is maybe 38 students drop next year, 44, 26, 24, 11, and then 3 plateauing off, but that could change. And that's why that's a huge disclaimer on that one. This is the revenue cap. This is really what drives the district 94% of the money. And one of the things that it's a complicated formula. It took somebody totally brilliant to write it, and it has hold harmless provisions in it. It has calculations that I don't quite understand. But one of the things it does is it takes your 3-year rolling averages, and it does 2- and 3-year rolling averages. And then it gets you to this, line 6. And line 6 is a 3-year rolling average that now you take that number times $450, and that gives you revenue, gives you per pupil aid. And that gives you about $900,000. So that's good. This down here basically throws in your property valuation, which drives your mill rate. That's $1.5 billion. So those are that. So here's your components. You have your third Friday counts, 3-year rolling averages. You have your property valuation. And then if you move forward to this area, it gives you some exemptions, some declining enrollment or hold harmless exemption. And right here, it's giving us a hold harmless exemption because our early estimates of a 92,908. It's not dropping us completely out because of that declining. And basically, a 3-year rolling average, that keeps you pretty much whole. And as we move forward down here, the DPI is estimated that the general aid was changed. It's not certified until October 15th. So this is the July. Basically, estimated by DPI, the most current we have, it says we're going to get $8.5 million, which is $136,000 less than last year. But we do know this. When our debt drops off, that we will have better shared costs, because that's another calculation. So it will give us more state aid, because inclusive in the general aid, they allocate X amount of dollars for all the districts. And then they look at all your annual reports, and then they look at your debt, and it's a complex formula, and then they say, they start nicking away at basically how much general aid you get. And if you have more debt that's applied because it's not instructional really, they start taking away some of the general aid. So people with less debt get more shared costs. So that kind of works in conjunction. They're saying, because they want to put it toward educational related things.
Carl, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In the past, you used that number, it's on your $8.549 million as state aid. Is that still an estimate at this point? Or is that pretty much what you assume it's going to be? I mean, I know there's always a little tweaking at the end, but are you pretty sure that that's the amount that we're going to get from the state?
I believe it will go up. It will go up, and I could be wrong, but I believe it's 8.5 right now, but I believe by October 15th that number will rise based upon our annual report numbers as they solidify them. I believe it won't rise tremendously, but I believe it will rise, somewhat. I don't believe it will go down.
Okay.
But it probably will now. Now it's come back.
Just because I asked you, no, but if I remember right, last year, it did something of a similar nature, and we changed the mill rate by 2 cents or 3 cents. So if that were to go up a little bit, we would do the similar? Is that?
Absolutely. I think history tells that DPI usually underestimates that a little bit over perhaps the 16 years I've been doing this. So I would think the likelihood that would do that. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
And so this really gets, after you do that, the revenue, allowable revenue limit is 13. So after they gave you 8.5, they said you can have, 13.5 million as a capacity to do so. So down here, you can say the general operations of Fund 10 taxes would be 13,322,742. 3 more years, one of our debt would be the short-term state trust fund loan. Annually, that's a $216,256 payment. And then our final debt service payment, 2,866, which gives you a grand total right there of 16,405,492, which you can tax. And what this tells you right here on the bottom, there's your mill rate, 1068, but you round it up, it's 1069. This is how the calculation then ends up. You can see that it's 16,405,492, and basically we levy to our capacity.
So Carl, if you couldn't go back again, I apologize, but I had a couple quick, one more slide. Oh, no, I had, I'm sorry. One more. If you look at line, oh, this is different.
Is this the right, should I go back?
This is not the same, that was part of the packet. But I'm looking at the calculation where you had showed, or just been discussing the non-referendum debt.
Oh, yes.
Okay, which was on line 14A, as well as the referendum approved debt, line 15A.
Correct.
Okay, so 15A after this year is gone, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it is 14B that you said will be 3 years yet?
Correct. We, this year, 2 more years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With that debt being retired, what impact does that have to the revenue cap ultimately?
Really, it has no impact to the revenue cap, Fund 39 whatsoever. The only impact it has is basically reduces that taxation by 2.86, which really would reduce your mill rate substantially. You'd be in the $2 perhaps less in the mill rate.
Right. Okay.
So it reduces
but
the
in the calculation of the revenue cap, it's always been, like you said, they've got formulas behind there that are difficult to necessarily get. I'm just curious as to what impact debt has on revenue.
On the revenue cap, none. But then there's another component of shared costs that they do a calculation based on that to get to the general state aid. In that formula, this 2.866 is gone. So that calculation would take 2.866 out of that and give you, hopefully, more shared costs as well. So not only are you basically reducing your debt, you may more than likely get more general state aid, so then your taxes would even go down more so. Does that make sense?
That was what I was looking for.
Carl, following up on that same idea, does line 15, your last number, line 16, whatever number it ends up in that box, does the mill rate, which would reflects how to get to that, are those two one based on the other permanently? I mean, or can that be changed? I mean, in other words, does it have to be, whatever number you put in there has to then reflect the mill rate?
Correct.
But that is also dependent on the valuation.
Yeah, on the valuation. So when do we, for instance, when do we set the mill rate when we, let's for instance, we were just talking about if our aid goes up a little bit, we can take that mill rate down a few cents. Do we have to do that?
You would have to.
Well, that's what I guess I was saying is, how would we do something so that it wouldn't?
You'd have to justify why you wouldn't.
Right, and that's, I guess that's what I'm saying. How would you do that in terms of the justification? Where would that number then apply that it wouldn't appear?
Are you saying, I'm not quite sure of the question, Pat.
Okay, so you got 16,406. Okay, let's just use a round number. $100,000 more comes into the district than you had anticipated. Okay, so you could make that 16,506. But if we, and then you would have to have a mill rate to reflect that, right below it. Is that correct?
If you had more money in general state aid, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So if you had more money in general state aid, in this calculation, because you're up to the levy, that number would have to go down. Your Fund 10 tax would have to go down. And that would literally move your mill rate down.
Okay, that was my
Yeah,
question. So it has to do that?
Yeah, it has to work in conjunction with each other.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the overall revenues for the district, so they're projected at 25,615,442, and I think here's there's that 13 million showing up, the big ticket, so to speak, item 13,322 for the revenue cap. We talked about open enrollment cost or revenue to the district. That's $900,000 in revenue coming in. But I also talked that's in a Fund 10 expense line. That's probably going to be about $980,000. So you can see that. You won't see that in this document. So as you move forward, the per pupil aid, I talked about that rolling 3-year average of $450, which was recently implemented. When they didn't start a few years back, they weren't increasing. They used to increase the revenue cap by $100 per pupil or $250 per pupil, and that would constantly go up. Well, and I'm not saying wrong or right, but the methodology to make up for that differential was to say we're going to give you just basically revenue for those 3-year rolling averages instead of increasing those dollar amounts and keeping the revenue limit cap flat. So that's where that $946,000 comes in. And the equalization aid, that's that $8.5 million. This year I was looking all over the place. Every year we literally changed the revenue cap. They said you get computer aid, used to be on the bottom of the revenue at about $40,000. And it wasn't there. And I was looking online and they said, well, that revenue is embedded in the calculation now. I'm not sure. I can't really find it. I think we lost $40,000 in computer aid. If you're a bigger district, I think everybody lost computer aid somehow. It was sneaked into the revenue cap this year. So you can see there's a multitude of other this is their $154,000 of the charter school grant, and all said and done, we have a $25,615,000. So regardless of what everything ebbs and flows. So in the calculation, yeah, we were able to increase some things in some areas and get some higher summer school count, and that was wonderful. But it actually all flows basically like crescendos in and out. It's $25,615,442. And if you look at
Carl,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go back a slide. On line 295,
yeah,
summer school revenue 0. You cannot in this have a negative revenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But why doesn't that show the fact that we have some? Yeah. Why can't it show some dollar amount there?
Which number? Number 295. Well, the summer school revenue would be revenue where you charge for fees. It's such as that. Summer school revenue would be when that's what that would be. Because otherwise, the revenue, that summer school revenue, that is part of that revenue cap. It's all based upon that student count, that 80 children or the 17 increase. Right. So that's where that revenue cap would go up based upon that. If your so that's where the ebb and flow is. But if your student population goes down 17 kids and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. I just didn't. I sort of like what Steve said. I'm just surprised that then they have a special line item there for summer school and with 0 in. I thought maybe ours would fit in there, but that's like you say for some extraneous fees or other income. So.
Yeah, and usually that's like John talked about. It's usually detrimental, and it perhaps could be it's not worth it. Sometimes the paperwork for the amount of fees you get. Let's say it's a couple $1,000s, and then consequently they record that in their summer school is a separate pupil count report. So they may say, well, you charge fees. So then they start tweaking at your FTE count. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Anything else on this one? So if I look at the expenditure, so this is a balanced budget. So the expenditure is basically 25 minutes, 615, 442 as well. And what this shows is basically the top line, the top 3 lines, that's your 75% of your budget that I showed you in the earlier slide. Non-salary, the 25% is basically all instructional related because that's what we do, but that's the 25% to get you to a balanced budget. So basically there are ebbs and flows all over the place in a budget every year, but yes, Pat.
So in this projected budget for 18-19, your salary for $12,487,000, did you build into that an increase based upon our previous historical increases?
That's an absolute. This is I have a wonderful staff, but when the board approved the 2.5%, Colleen has spreadsheets that are so complicated in formulas and other salaries. That's inclusive of all the salary increases that the board approved in May. So everybody's set, all the staffing is set, everything the board approved. Then going forward, with all the staff snapshot in time, actually was snapshotted in September 26th, I believe. So it's pretty much, that's a very accurate portrayal of extracurricular and everything in Fund 10. Basically, the operating transfer accounts for basically all Fund 27 salaries and fringe. So all those, so there is no percentage-based increase. It's what it is with health insurance because we knew we had actual numbers.
I think if you wait until we get to the next slide, it might be a little clearer.
Okay.
If you want to try to make some sort of comparison.
Sure.
So if you, this is, that was only Fund 10. Remember, I'm looking at Fund 10 only. We have a multitude of Fund 10 is basically the driving force because Fund 27 is supplemented by Fund 10. If you look at this slide, this is, and I try to give a snapshot, a simplistic snapshot every year of all the funds. Fund 10, Fund 21, 27, 38, 39, 41, 49, and 50. So the general fund, you can see the salary of $12,000,004 and last fiscal year actual expenses 12,300, and then the year before 12, basically, and then 12,180. You can see the ebb and flow. But we always had the snapshot. We know our salary line is coming pretty close. We know our health insurance increase. We know our FICA. We know all our other salaries. We know our curricular. We have projections for substitutes and the multitude of other accounts and sporting events and athletics going forward. So that number is about 12,400. And their salary for basically fringe benefits, $4.1 million. That's inclusive of all the things that we know. So we have all these numbers. And then we have our staffing in play. And so that's what we know. And
basically, if I may, Pat, if you, in the board packet that we had, or the online packet,
okay,
which is slightly different than this, if you go to page 36 and use column C versus column H, that'll give you kind of the comparison of last year actual to this year budget.
Okay. So when we talk about salary increases in the spring, as we always do in the spring of the year, we're really talking about the increase then that will be projected in the next budget. So this is the actual amount that we increased last year as it was projected on the 18-19 school year.
Right.
Am I saying that right?
I'm not sure, you'd have to say it again.
Okay, so last spring when we awarded the increases,
yes,
those numbers then are reflected, and I'm just going to use the number right there, $12,487,000, as we increased, and in this year, 18-19. And then
questions over.
Okay.
Presentation's done.
That was the end of that.
Okay.
So that's what I meant.
So what we approve in the spring is what takes place through this year.
July 1st.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah.
Good job.
And then subsequent to that, maybe it was at the last board meeting, we approved several other position changes.
Sure.
Is that all part of that as well?
it is. It is, yeah. So it's really so the snapshot holds. If we hold, we're good. You know, basically, and hopefully we come up better. We try. We're doing the best we can, but what I'll say is that, yeah, the budgets. Every school district's budget is tight, because look at, we're only one of 5 or 7 school districts that tax underneath the allowable revenue limit for all those years. But consequently, the revenue cap basically goes up, doesn't go up 1% maybe, if you're lucky. And maybe it goes up if you have a little ebb and flow. But what does society does? What does your grocery, what does, basically that goes up 3%, 3 or 4%, 3.5% or things like that. And if you go up 2% in 75% of your budget, you can see the two don't meet. They don't meet. So we've been pretty much under keeping us fiscally sound. And remember, with our even our fund balance now at 8.6, we just had a bond rating, and you put our district in like down in southern Wisconsin in a area that has thriving businesses that really help their bond rating. We're in a great position. We're the best bond rating we can possibly have with our spending, and we don't short-term borrow, so we're not taking expenses away from for principal and interest. So what we're doing is we're keeping the revenue cap consistent. So this is basically a summary of all the funds. You can see there's the 25 million in Fund 10, 25.6, and the revenues 25.6. Keeping the fund balance 8.6, 8.6 going forward. That's the projection. Special revenue trust fund is donations. So we can see that they can have a rolling. We have a multitude of accounts in there, and multitude of individuals in high school, middle school, and they have the teachers have access to them. And they have their role every year. So there's accounts that they use for other activities throughout the years, and a lot of entities donate to specific things such as hockey or football camp or quarterback club, or there's a multitude of things going on there. So they have revenue. Basically, we expect about $180,000 in expenses and about $200,000 in revenue. They don't always use it up, but consequently, they don't have to, and it just rolls every year. Special education, it's another entity. You can see that that's about 3.9, almost a $4 million budget. Special education, the revenue from the federal government is basically about 1/3 of that amount of money. It's consistent throughout the state of Wisconsin. So you have to supplement it. So you don't get your expenses are $3.9 million, but here in Fund 27, the Fund 10 has to make up for the other 2/3 of it. So because it has to be zero at the end of the fiscal year. So consequently, there's an operating transfer in every school district at the end of the fiscal year to make that balance. So it's not unusual. State trust fund loan, there's the $216,000 worth of expenses. Here is the our actual expense for our debt service is 2.9, but we only need to take in 2.86 worth of revenues this year because we have a fund balance, so we don't have to tax that amount, and that helped the tax burden too. So in the fiscal year that'd be done. We used Fund 41 a while back. We perhaps when I was first here, one of the things we looked at all our student activity accounts, and we knew that a lot of that money was basically for athletic principles, and it didn't fit into the criteria of student activities. So we moved that money and earmarked in Fund 41 for a future date for athletic-related things, and consequently, they're in the athletic complex. So we use that money, and the DPI doesn't like you to sit money in Fund 41 every year. They ask you in your annual report, are you going to use it? What are you using it for? Why didn't you use it yet? So consequently, that Fund 41, and that was a taxation account initially. Prior to me arriving in the district, it was taxed for projects in the district. And the capital projects is left at about 17.3, so that was really helpful in building our athletic complex within our budget, which was amazing too. If you think about that, about a $2.3 million athletic complex, a renovation of the school district itself. So we're at about $2.7 million, and we didn't go to a referendum. That's amazing. I don't think any other school district can even talk about that. They do get donations, and our donations were wonderful and helpful, but not all can do that. Our food service program, of course.
You're comfortable with that number for the capital projects this year of 17?
I am.
70.35.
Carlton, as long as we've stopped for a sec, can I ask under food service, non-salary, going all the way over to the last 3 columns, it shows 1560, 527, 1617, 533, and then it jumps to 1.2 million. What was the big difference there?
Are you saying right here?
Yeah, right there.
It's the outsourcing of the food.
Was it the outsourcing?
Yeah, the outsourcing. And you can, right here, we have no salary in the fringe. 1 point anymore, is that what you're trying to refer to?
Yeah.
And this year, the actual audited, well, we had $650 in salary, but it was, transfer.
Well, I was actually looking at the lines right below it, 533 there and 1.2 white right there.
He's looking at 16-17 versus 17-18.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the food service program, and we'll have more conversations in the future about that. But that's one of the things that we need to explore further in this budget. But that's great, a great catch by your eye. And I was going to talk about that shortly, but not in huge detail. But something to just keep an eye on, and we literally need to keep an eye on that because as we move forward, when the board gets when they come to the budget hearing, there'll be an overall dollar amount of expenses and revenues to approve, and this will change. But you can see that the overall one of the actually I would say board resolutions will be this number of revenues, 33.6 million, and then 34.1 for expenses. That'd be the overall. But you can see that it's ebbs and flows. Their main concern is usually Fund 10 and Fund 50 and Fund 27. The rest are kind of rolling. Your debt's going off the table, so those are just commonalities, part of the fund balance. You're not going to have more revenue in Fund 39 anymore after, and you're going to have, so those kind of net out each other. This is the DPI budget publication, and this is it's published. I believe Carol is it's in the paper.
It was sent to the paper, yeah.
It's sent to the paper. It should be in this week, Thursday?
Yeah.
Thursday, so it's required by school district to have that published 14 days prior to the October 30th budget hearing. So there's detail in this. I'm not going to go through every line, but basically I told you the snapshot of what's going on in the budget overall, and you can see they really are concerned about in this calculation is revenues. They're concerned overall your revenues from each other, recording those accurately, because a lot of that money comes from the federal government, your local government, and they want to know where those are earmarked. So you can see they spend a whole page getting to state sources and where these revenues came from 17-18, and the 17-18 basically is going to hold whatever that is in that column is. And these are the projections going forward for the other years. You can see federal sources over the years, how that's gone down. That's part of that too. I said to you, 94% of our money comes from two sources, state sources and local taxes, and 2% came from feds. But you can see we actually, 2 years back, we were able to get more revenues from the feds. But you can see 648, 622, 520. You can see where that is going federally. And then so overall, 25,615,442, that number will come up again. That's your overall revenues. And then expenditures, they're going to go through instruction. They're going to go through support staff and detail by function. I gave you the breakout by expenditures by object and expenditures by function. Function is, and it shows they want to do the detail of pupil services, instructional staff, general administration, debt services, that's short-term borrowing. We don't do that. And so as we move forward, you can see that's 25,615 overall. 121 is that donation fund. You can see the projection that I talked about in that summary sheet under the same number. And Fund 27 overall, as we move forward, same number I showed you, 3.934. That number the revenues have to equate to that at the end of the fiscal year. Fund 38 and Fund 39, you can see this is our debt service and Fund 38, both those short-term debt and long-term debt. At the end of this fiscal year, then the indebtedness will only be this basically the short-term Fund 38. No longer Fund 39, the Fund 48-1. Steve pointed to that, and we talked about it. Fund 41 is exhausted, and Fund 49 is 17,355 left, and then we're planning on spending that amount of money this year. Fund 50, this is the account we talked about. Interesting. in a lot of ways, we'll talk more about it, and I have no recommendation right now, or even, and we haven't discussed this administratively, so, but just to give you a wherewithal that this fiscal year, we had basically a $93,000 fund balance in Fund 50. And our understanding was basically that our revenues, we would be net whole. And also our understanding, but at the end of the fiscal year, that fund balance was exhausted. And so what else happened with that fund balance? You can see that they needed another 40, we needed another 41,000 from an operating transfer to take out of Fund 10 and 12. So basically we had basically $41,000 shortfall. Some of the, talking to our third-party vendor, why that didn't net, and some of the things we analyzed, one of the things I analyzed was the revenues compared to the prior year were $161,000 less than the prior year. And their expenses were $131,000 more. And there was, we know that we have movement though, DPI regulates this. So one of the things we're under, there's a 5-year contract, but DPI, we renew that contract each year. So if we have options, I would say, as we move forward in these conversations, if it doesn't. This year I'm anticipating, I didn't want to, but the more I looked at it, there's, in good consciousness, when I did the analysis, I anticipate basically the 142,000. I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I tried to pretend that something wasn't going on in that account or not. We know we can still have our Starbucks Cafe because we know that now, we do know that they're not the only player in town who can sell Starbucks coffee. That was part of the narrative as well, but we know we can get it from Gordon Foods. So in the long run, it's a whole nother conversation, but this is anticipation. We're still balancing the budget, but we're under 1 year at least obligation through this entity. And whether, as we have conversations, maybe it will work out. But we'll have more conversations and more recommendations, and we'll be monitoring this with our due diligence. So that's speaking, that would be part of that operating transfer this year. But one thing we do know, that 140,000, if that continues and compounds, going out of an operating transfer, that's taking $140,000 away from its structure, or professional development, or salaries. So, so if we can make that self-sufficient again, or balance that out and tweak that, and I'm hoping my calculations are wrong, but literally, seeing what I saw last year, I wouldn't be comfortable saying that it was less just for the sake of saying it's less. We'll see. Seeing is believing, and I'm not everything can change, but that's the concept that I wanted to talk about with the food service program.
Carl, if we had a representative from Chartwell sitting here tonight and we said we're running $142,000 deficit here, can you give us in a 30 seconds as to why that is? What do you think they'd say?
I know exactly what they're going to say, and I did an analysis on it. They're going to say your labor costs our labor costs are killing us. But I ran a labor analysis past. Our labor was more expensive when we had our own food service company. They're going to say that we need to slash and burn labor, and which isn't what I see. And then their cost increase is what I just showed you. The revenues aren't there. We're $161,000 in revenues less. So we're not producing more products. The thing that's working out is the cafe. It's working out wonderfully. That's supplementing those. So we're not getting
back though to the food service, excluding the cafe.
So that's part of it though, because the cafe actually gets meal reimbursement. So actually, when we sell most of our products out of there, they're part of the revenue. So one of the arguments was saying that perhaps the loss was saying that, well, we pulled revenue from the high school kitchen. But in theory, we lost 161,000 less revenue than when we operated ourselves. So that narrative doesn't really work for me in a business sense, and I've worked in the private sector. So the other aspect was, well, they'll say that what I see is their food purchasing isn't pretty much it's their cost of their food. And they were supposed to be the big player that could literally, and maybe they are, our costs would be reduced because of their gigantic purchasing power. So it will be pointed at salaries, but the salaries doesn't mirror. So they'll be telling you that. And I'll be saying, no. So one of the things I think, what I would suggest, we hold and analyze it ourselves. Because, no matter what entity comes in, we can look at it ourselves and figure out it, and then try to get the narrative and the conversation with them. There's, how long, when do you get to the point you cut your losses? Well, I don't know that if we're to that point, but I do know this. I do know that we don't have to renew the food service contract going forward, where it's every year it's an annual renewal, and you don't not have to renew it, and that's why DPI regulates it so thoroughly. Even if you're under a 5-year contract, you don't have to renew it. So there's options for the boards, but maybe they can come to the table and say, oh, we're going to make you $200,000 this year. And if they can, if maybe that's the option. I'm not sure, but I do know that what I see right now in the budget, we're balancing the budget, but I'm going to have that placeholder for an operating transfer. I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not going to come back to the board and say, oh, I'm $140,000 short, because this year we were $141,000 short, and next year, if I just do a simple projection forward, it'd be 147. So that's the story of that.
Well, the last thing I think, that speaking for myself, is we want our food service people to feel that they have to meet our demands, but in the process don't provide enough food for our children and or / our staff. I mean, I don't think that's the answer.
I think Mark and some people made some great suggestions. We're going to do a bunch of employee surveys and student surveys, and getting a flavor of the personnel and a flavor of, is it really better? And things such as that. We do know that all our catering is done not by Chartwells, but it's done by DAR. So everything you're seeing out there that is beautiful and taken care of is done in-house. So, and so we can do it. And we also know that we can continue with our cafe, and they give us $25,000 toward an infrastructure. We upgraded that from 10 to finally got to 25. It costs about $50,000. So we have some benefit from it going forward with an infrastructure in creativity. But it's not the end of the world, but it's something we definitely need to keep our eye on the ball, and we will. And this is the budget publication that's in the paper. Same thing, the shortened version. Shows that from last year, basically our proposed tax levy overall and expenses, percentage increase from the levy over last year. It's 0.097. You can see when I said it was 16.2 versus 16.4 now. Here's we always designate the fund balance at least temporarily. We know that we don't need a debt service reduction. This probably was changed slightly. You can see we have designated fund balance always we've had for years. 7 point, basically the general fund, but we make it not so strict that we cannot apply and use the fund balance for debt or OPEB reduction, which we didn't need. So we can use it in conjunction collectively, but it's DPI likes us to designate fund balance going forward. So this is no different than we've done in the past. Tax levy disclaimer, its rates are estimates, and a number of factors will change the actual levy before the final levy is set by the board in late October. These factors include actual enrollment, actual property valuations, and the amount of state aid determined in October. So if you think adventure is dangerous, try a routine. It's lethal, and I think I love that quote. Be what the Toltecs have used for years as their guiding principles. So I'm trying to be impeccable with my word. I'm not taking anything personally that you guys are talking. I didn't mean to turn on the speakers when you were talking, Pat, just so you know.
Well,
don't make assumptions about others. Always do your best. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. So this really concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions at this time? And I say this time because I assume both you and Dr. Nean will be available for questions as we continue to digest between now and the final budget hearing.
My only comment is we're going to meet on the 30th, is it, for the budget hearing?
Correct.
And I know as a rule, what we have in front of us will be 99.9% of what's going to happen then in terms of the numbers. with maybe a little tweaking, correct? So that's a pretty pro forma meeting, I suspect. Yeah.
It will not be.
No, I don't, if
But
we have any
barring
questions.
any significant change.
Yeah, barring any significant.
In the revenues and/or, as you've had additional time to ask some additional questions, if there are any adjustments that need to be made.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us up to the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, is there a second?
Second?
Motion and second, any discussion, questions? There being none, got a motion and second, we'll take a roll call.
Dimitri Martin?
Dimitri, consent agenda? Oh, he is off.
Offline.
Pat Fair?
Aye.
Mark Polbisky?
Aye.
Sally Robinson?
Yes.
Betty Manning?
Yes.
Steve Johnson?
Yes. Okay, with that, I will say thank you to everyone and entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Betty.
Betty? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Carl, should we?
Thank you, everyone.